Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a fantastic day. So today, we're finally getting to install the rear part of a lift on the 1978 Jeep Cherokee. UPS finally got that last set of leaf springs delivered. Thanks to Rusty's Off-Road for sending me another one after UPS lost the first one. No questions, they sent it out as soon as we figured out UPS had done their investigation and lost it. So hopefully this part of the lift will go a lot easier than the front part. If you recall in that video, I had some issues with the passenger side U-bolts. It took me a couple hours to get 2 bolts done. Yes, 2. I'm gonna end up reusing the ones that are on there until I can source some new ones because it goes over the edge of the differential and they're not standard size. Anyways, no steering components, no nothing on this one. Now the front, the leaf springs went underneath the axle. On the rear, the leaf springs go on top of the axle. So this is a pretty straightforward, it's 4 bolts for your leaf springs. I'm gonna replace the shackle bushings also, which is 2 more bolts. So there is one kicker when you're installing new leaf springs on your old Jeep, is you have to remove the factory skid plate for the fuel tank to get the front bolts out of the driver's side leaf spring, and let me show you that. So right down there is the bolts, that one right there. And as you can see, there's the skid plates, there's the bolts. So you have to remove the skid plates to get to the inside of that bolts, to the nuts to remove this leaf spring. Now, if you look at the leaf springs, they are very flat. I know the tire's in the way, but we're gonna fix that with the new ones. And look at the arc and the new ones right there. Now this old lift that's on here, this rough country, well, it rode pretty rough. I can already tell the front is much softer than the rear, so hopefully these rear leaf springs will soften it up, and we can get rid of those nasty lift blocks. I mean, why would you spend all kinds of money on a vehicle, whether it's an old one or a new one, and put 4, 6, 8-inch lift blocks? You know, 2 inches, okay. Usually they'll do that with like a 6-inch lift. You'll get 4 inches of lift in leaf springs and 2 inches in lift blocks to correct your pinion angle. But 4-inch lift blocks is driving me up a wall, especially if you're actually going to 4-wheel this. It puts a lot of leverage on your leaf springs. So let's look at our parts on the table, and then let's get this thing in the air and get to work. So here's all the parts I'm really going to need, and it's not much. I got my shocks, I reused the stock hardware, new U-bolts, and my bushings. I got some tools out to use, and that's pretty much all I'm going to need. Now we will need our 20-ton press to push the shackle bushings in and out. Not a big deal there. And then I did go ahead and I measured to the bottom of the tape right here to the ground center. So I know, and I'm at 35 and 11/16 inches. I am curious if I'm going to gain any height. I'm assuming I'll probably gain 3/4 of an inch. Put your guess in the comments below, and don't cheat and skip forward, but let's go ahead and get this started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the vehicle jacked up, and on jack stands I have the front wheels already chalked. I'll remove the tires just so that axle can drop down far enough. Then I'm going to place the jacks underneath the axle just to kind of hold it, and we'll start taking everything off. So what I was talking about earlier is lift blocks, and I truly do despise them. This is what they are. So this is the 44-year-old leaf spring right there. You can see it's very flat from this angle, especially compared to the new ones. What they did when they installed this lift was added this piece right here. This is called a lift block. I absolutely despise these. And all it's doing is it's spacing the axle down to give you a cheaper lift. Now, when you do a lift, typically you're going to place the leaf springs. This is the, in my eyes, unacceptable way to do it. And then you're going to make sure that your brake lines, right there, are longer. Now, as I said in previous videos, I'm going to replace these brake lines. But when I do a complete brake flush and want to do a rear disc brake conversion, the old drum brake's going to go away. And really, there's no reason to replace the brake lines when they work right now. There's not dry rot, cracking, any of that stuff. So I'm gonna leave those on for, you know, probably another month or two until I can get to this rear disc brake conversion. But that's not what we're here to do today. Today we're gonna do the leaf springs. So next step I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and remove the shocks and get this skid plate down and out of my way. So then it's a pretty simple process of just removing the leaf springs and the axle. So underneath the Jeep, I'm gonna start removing these bolts here. I'm gonna remove the ones on the bottom, not the sides. Yeah, here, got two here, one there, some more up front. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all those done, being careful of the parking brake cable right here. And we'll get this pull pan dropped down. The skid plate is off. What I did is I put my ATV jack to hold it up because your parking brake cable goes through there. So the skid plate moved over. This will give me just enough access to get up here to this bolt on the inside, the nut in there, to pull this bolt out. So next thing we're gonna do is get these air shocks out. It's a 3/4, 2 bolts, one at the bottom, one on the top. Make sure you got slack. You don't want to overstretch any of your brake lines, axle tube vents, any of that stuff. So let's get the shocks off, get the old air lines out that are run to the back, and we'll move on. One down. So both shocks are currently out. I do have the axle supported by some jacks. I have them under the brake drum, not gonna hurt anything. And that's just to make sure that I don't overstretch that brake line, which is that one right there. Now I know I'm gonna replace it, I just don't wanna do it yet. I wanna wait till I do a rear disc brake conversion. So we'll just go ahead and be careful with that. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off the bolts to the leaf springs on the U-bolts, and then remove the shackles. So start with the U-bolts, and then the end bolts, and we'll get the shackles and those bushings replaced. So let's get that done. I'm gonna do one side at a time. So I remember how tight the front ones were, so I just went ahead, got the big boy, 7/8 inch. Because I know the big impact gun doesn't fit, I'll break these loose by hand and then use the little impact. Wish they made the stubby ones do 1,100 foot-pounds. We'll be reusing this, but we're getting rid of this and this. So the bolt heads are a 13/16, and the nuts, the retaining nut is a 7/8. There is not enough room to get the impact. There we go. It's probably the most difficult nut. Now we'll take the leaf spring off. Now that everything's out, let's go ahead and let's compare it. First of all, here is the shackle. Here's the old one. It's not nearly as bad as the front. Some cracking there. This side's not as bad. We'll get that pressed out and a new one put in. The old shocks. Now, here's the leaf spring we just took out. For some reason, the previous owner put those clamps on there to help get more lift, axle warp, something, but that clamp is on there. But look at the length difference in the arc. Now I know if I take that clamp off, you'll get a little bit more arc, kind of like this side, but just look at the length difference. In comparison, here's the old Rough Country front. Now these are 4-inch lift. Now I'll go ahead, I'll replace this bushing. I'll use a 20-ton press, and then back in it goes. Switch on over to the passenger side. There is the shackle with the new bushing pushed in. Here is the old one I pushed out. And here is the new one that I messed up. I know some people don't show you their mess ups, but look on here, the press slipped and it came and it crushed that sleeve on the inside. So this is unfortunately junk. It is what it is. So on the passenger side, I will not be replacing this bushing. I'll go ahead and order a new one. I'll do that at a later date. It's pretty easy to get to on the passenger side anyways. So now it's just reverse order. I need to get the new leaf springs in. For those wondering, I think the shipping weight on these was 51 or 52 pounds, something like that. So no more lift block, no more flat old spring. We'll get that new leaf spring in and get everything buttoned up. So real quick, before I install it, just like the front, you have a centering pin right here. But again, these are on the bottom of the leaf spring, or on the front where the leaf springs go underneath the axle. It was on the top. The centering pin goes right here. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get the front bolts in and lined up. Then I'll worry about the shackle and stuff on the rear. And we'll make sure that pin is lined up and get the new U-bolts on there, and we'll get those torqued down. All right, got the leaf spring on, let me show you. So went ahead, I got the U-bolts torqued down, I got that shock on, I still have to put this shock on here, but none of my suspension is tight. So I'll get this shock put on. I do have this E-clip off with this, so the brake line is down. It does come with a small extender, and then we'll get the wheels on and get everything torqued down. So I'll get this shock on real quick and get it done. So shock's on, U-bolts are torqued. Next thing I do is put the wheels and tires on. We'll get the lug nuts torqued down, and then when it is sitting at right height, I can go ahead and tighten all the bolts for the leaf springs, and then it's all in the Rusty's instructions on the size of bolt depending on where you're gonna tighten it to. Then we'll finally get the final measurement and see if we gain any height. Again, I'm thinking 1/2 inch, 3/4. Well, it's currently the next day, and I'm actually refilming this portion of the video because I just wasn't happy when editing on the final part of this lift. So let me kind of show you how the video ended and while I'm done, but I'm not. And I'll explain that here in a second. So this is the final product of the Rusty's 4-inch lift. You got 4-inch leaf springs in the front that go under your front axle, and you have 4-inch leaf springs in the rear that go on top of the rear axle. Now, if you put comments down below, remember we were 35 and 11/16 inches to the bottom of the tape. Let's go ahead and get the tape measure. Tape measure right here. It is at 37. The same spot. I'm at 37 and 11/16 to the bottom tape. 2 inches lift is pretty good. That just goes to show you how much the stock leaf springs have settled over 44 years, because that was a 4-inch lift. They had a 4-inch lift block with your stock leaf springs, so that's pretty good. Now, because I got that 2 inches lift, I ran into another problem, and well, kind of got to show you. So first of all, this is called a Z-bracket. And what this does is this lets you reroute your rear brake line to drop it down about 2.5 inches right there. Not a big deal, right? And that's after you put an extended brake line on. Well, remember this had a 4-inch lift, so I already had extended brake lines front and rear, but I don't know how extended they did the rears. So let's get underneath the Jeep and I'll show you. So currently, this is the rear brake line that is extended. And that Z-clamp would go right here, and you're supposed to bend your hard line, drop it down, and you're good to go. So right here, I have lots and lots of room. I could actually put the E-clip right back in up there and not have any issues. The problem is when you take all the weight off of both of these leaf springs and let the whole axle droop completely down, this is top when it's up here. And that's the last thing you want. You don't want to rip your brake line and have it come out. So I'm gonna leave it like this. I do have the new brake line on order. The reason I didn't have it currently as well, there's 2 sizes to choose from. So I had to get in here and measure the different threads. So moving forward the vehicle, this right here is your parking brake cable, which goes down to your drum brake. Now, as you can see, there's plenty of slack right there. And the same on that side, there's some slack. The problem is, if you look, I've had to pull the E-clip off of this one because it was too tight. Now you're going, hey, there's lots of room there. You can go ahead and pull this back to 2 inches. Well, not exactly. So if I were to pull this cable back up, slide it in E-clip, it would make this too tight when you are an off camber. So when this wheel here would drop down, this cable here would be screaming. That's just not acceptable in my eyes. So coming to the front of the vehicle, this is the mid cable. So your parking brake is in 3 sections. You have the first cable here that goes to your pedal. You have this mid cable which connects either side, and then you have 1 cable on either side to each drum brake or disc brake. So this cable here really needs about 6 inches of room to go forward, maybe 4, just to get to this. Now this has not slid forward at all. I've just taken the clamp off of this. So what's the fix for this? Well, it's pretty easy. Put longer cables and a longer brake line on. So the current brake line that's on there, I could probably get away with by using that Z bracket. I just don't like that. I'd rather have it in the factory location. So I went ahead and I ordered a new brake line that was extended. Not expensive. It's about $25, $30 for a stainless steel brake line. Get rid of that old rubber one anyways. For the parking brake cables, well, that's even easier. BJ's Off-Road has extended parking brake cables in 4 and 6 inch lengths. So I went ahead and I ordered the 4-inch length extended at about $25 a piece with free shipping. Now the only downside to that as well, I gotta drop that skid plate again, but not really a big deal because you're supposed to retorque all the bolts on your whole lift after 200 to 300 miles. So really the only downside I have right now is I don't have a parking brake. Is it still safe to drive? Yeah, but should you have a parking brake? Yeah, especially if you're gonna pass an inspection in some states. So is the lift complete? Technically, yes, the lift is complete. Am I satisfied with the braking situation of not having a parking brake? Absolutely not. So those parts are in order. Not real hard to replace. I don't know if I'll show that in a video or not, but got some cool things coming forward. Next video, we will get the new seats and door cards in, and let me tell you what, it's going to look good. And then after that, fuel injection. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and until next time.